Ethan and Claire had always dreamed of a quiet life away from the chaos of the city. When they found the old Victorian house nestled at the edge of a sleepy town, it felt like fate. The house was beautiful, tall with intricate woodwork and a sprawling garden. It had been on the market for years, yet no one seemed interested. The real estate agent, an older woman with wary eyes, hesitated before handing them the keys. "People say this house has a presence," she murmured. Ethan laughed it off. "A presence? Like a ghost?" The woman hesitated. "Just take care." They moved in with their 6-month-old daughter, Lily, eager to make the house their home. But from the first night, Claire felt something was off. The air was thick with an unspoken sadness, and at night, the wooden floors creaked as if someone unseen was pacing the halls. Lily had always been a good sleeper, but in this house she would wake up crying at odd hours. One night, Claire and Ethan were jolted awake by a soft melody drifting from Lily's room. It was an old lullaby, one neither of them knew. Claire rushed to the nursery, heart pounding. The rocking chair by the window was swaying by itself. Lily sat in her crib, staring at the chair, her tiny lips curled into a smile. "Mama," she cooed, reaching out toward the empty air. Claire snatched Lily up, her hands trembling. The chair stopped moving the moment she turned away. Determined to prove it was all in her head, Claire began exploring the house. In the attic, she found a dusty old trunk filled with forgotten belongings, letters, a child's tiny shoes, and a porcelain doll with hollow black eyes. Among the letters, one caught her attention. It was dated 1902 and written by a woman named Eleanor Whitmore. "They took my baby. They told me he was gone, but I hear his cries. He is here. He speaks to me in the walls. They think I'm mad, but I know the truth. I will not leave without him." That night, Claire avoided the attic. But as she brushed her teeth, she glanced at the mirror, then froze. Behind her, in the reflection, stood a woman in a black Victorian dress. Her eyes were hollow, sunken, and filled with sorrow. Claire spun around. No one was there. But when she turned back to the mirror, the woman remained, and she was whispering. Claire became obsessed with Eleanor Whitmore. She searched the town archives and discovered that Eleanor had lived in their house over 100 years ago. Her infant son Henry had died mysteriously, but she insisted he was still alive. Eventually, the townspeople had her committed to an asylum. She was right, a frail librarian whispered when Claire asked about Eleanor. "Her child never left. His bones are still in that house." Claire's stomach turned. Had Eleanor's baby been murdered? Determined to find answers, she began examining the nursery walls. When she tapped near the crib, the sound was hollow. With trembling hands, she pried open the wooden paneling. Behind it, she found a tiny skeleton, wrapped in a decayed blanket. Lily's baby monitor crackled to life. "Mama," a child's voice whispered. That night, the house came alive. Doors slammed, furniture shook, and Lily's crib slid across the room as if pulled by invisible hands. Ethan, who had been skeptical, now held Claire and Lily tightly as shadows swirled around them. A whisper echoed through the house. "I just want my baby." Claire realized Eleanor wasn't trying to harm them. She was searching for her lost son. With tears streaming down her face, Claire picked up the tiny remains and whispered, "Eleanor, he's here. Henry is here." The house fell silent. The shadows retreated. And in the mirror, Claire saw Eleanor holding a baby in her arms. For the first time, she was smiling. Then she vanished. The next day, Claire and Ethan reported their discovery to the authorities. The remains were buried under a proper headstone, and for the first time since moving in, the house felt lighter. That night, Lily slept soundly. The baby monitor remained silent. And when Claire glanced in the mirror one last time, she saw only her own reflection. But as she turned off the light, she swore she heard the faintest whisper. "Thank you." The town of Black Hollow had always been shrouded in superstition. People whispered about the forest on the outskirts, a place where shadows moved without bodies, and where the air carried whispers of long-forgotten souls. They warned of strange lights flickering deep in the woods, and of an ancient power hidden within. But 19-year-old Damien never believed in such tales, until the night he saw her. A full moon bathed the town in eerie silver light, and Damien found himself drawn to the edge of the forest as if someone was calling him. The wind carried a soft, melodic voice, a sound that made his heart pound with both terror and desire. And then, amidst the towering trees, he saw her. She was glowing. A woman with long silver hair that shimmered like liquid starlight, and eyes that burned with a haunting golden hue. Massive wings extended from her back, so white they seemed to cut through the darkness itself. She wasn't human. She was something divine, something forbidden. "Damien," she whispered, her voice slipping into his ears like a lullaby laced with venom. "I've been waiting for you." Damien should have run. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, but he couldn't. He felt hypnotized, drawn in by her unnatural beauty, by the way the shadows recoiled from her glow. She took a step closer, and the air around him thickened, heavy with an unearthly energy. "What are you?" Damien stammered, his breath shaky. She smiled, a soft, knowing smile. "I am Seraphina, and you are mine." The moment she spoke, something inside Damien twisted. A searing heat spread through his veins, burning and intoxicating. He fell to his knees, gasping, as his skin tingled with a sensation both painful and euphoric. Seraphina knelt beside him, pressing her cold fingers against his burning forehead. "You are special, Damien," she murmured, her lips dangerously close to his. "That's why I chose you." That night, Damien gave himself to her, completely. He wasn't sure if it was love, lust, or something darker, but as their bodies intertwined under the moon's glow, he felt something change. His senses sharpened, his muscles pulsed with newfound strength. His very soul felt as though it had been cracked open, reshaped, and filled with something ancient. And Seraphina? She watched him with a satisfied smile. "Now," she whispered, tracing her fingers across his chest, "you're becoming something more." The next morning, Damien woke up feeling different. His vision was sharper, the sounds of the world louder, and his body felt invincible. He walked into town, and people turned their heads as he passed. Some looked at him with awe, others with fear. It was as if they knew something had changed. That's when he noticed the hunger. It started as a dull ache in his chest, then spread like wildfire. No matter how much he ate, how much he drank, it wasn't enough. The hunger wasn't for food. It was for something deeper, something primal. Blood. That night, as he stared at his reflection, he saw it. His eyes had darkened, almost black. His veins pulsed beneath his skin, filled with something more than human blood. Then he heard Seraphina's voice in his head. "Feed, my love. Take what is yours." And he did. He started small, a rat in the alley, then a stray dog. But the hunger only grew stronger, more unbearable. Until one night, he lost control. It was an accident. At least that's what he told himself. A drunk man had stumbled into Damien on the street, slurring curses under his breath. Normally, Damien would have ignored him, but that night, the hunger was stronger than ever. He didn't remember much, just flashes. The man's throat, the way his skin split open like paper, the warmth of the blood as it coated Damien's hands. The way his body felt as if it had been set ablaze with power the moment he tasted it. By the time Damien came back to himself, the man was a lifeless husk at his feet. His body twitched, but no breath came, no heartbeat, just silence. And standing in the alley, watching with glowing golden eyes, was Serafina. "Good," she whispered, stepping over the corpse. She cradled Damien's face in her hands, licking a drop of blood from his cheek. "You're learning." From that night on, Damien was no longer just a boy. He was something else, something feared. Every time he fed, his power grew. He could hear thoughts, see in total darkness, move faster than the wind itself. He was unstoppable. The town, once indifferent to him, now bowed before him. The mayor came to him for advice. Criminals fled when they saw his shadow. Women and men alike desired him, but none could truly have him. Only Serafina. She was always there, watching, whispering in his ear, pushing him further. "You're destined for more, Damien. This town is small. Take more. Rule more." And he did. He moved beyond Black Hollow, conquering neighboring towns. His name spread like wildfire, whispered in fear and reverence. He was no longer just Damien. He was a legend. But power came with a price. The more Damien fed, the more monstrous he became. His reflection grew distorted. His skin darkened, his teeth sharpened. And Serafina? She began to change too. Her once pure wings turned black, her eyes gleaming with something sinister. She had never been just an angel. She was something far worse. And now she had made him into something even darker. "You were never meant to be human, Damien," she whispered, wrapping her arms around him as they stood atop a mountain of bones. "You are meant to be a god. But gods do not love." And as Damien looked into her golden eyes, he realized he was no longer the boy who had once craved her touch. He was something else entirely. Something beyond human. Something beyond salvation. And the hunger, it would never end. Epilogue. The Fall. Legends say that Damien's reign lasted a century before he disappeared. Some say he became a shadow, lurking in the dark, waiting for his next meal. Others say he and Serafina burned the world to ashes, leaving only whispers in the wind. But one thing is certain. If you ever find yourself wandering too deep into the woods on a full moon night, and you hear a voice whisper your name, run. Because Damien is still hungry. And this time he might choose you.